Um, Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Lukman, and I'm on developer relations team at Paystack. We're still a few minutes away from 3 o'clock, so I see a few people have joined now. Let's give it a few minutes for others to join as well. Uh, yeah, while we're waiting, please say hello in the chat. Tell us your name, where you're joining from. I'm Lukman, like I said, and I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria. Let's see. Say hello. Also, while we're waiting, let's have some wait music. Okay, it's 3 o'clock now. We're only at 16 attendees, so just give it 3 more minutes, five, and then we kick off. Okay. So it's 3:05 now, and I think we can get started. So hi everyone, welcome again to our first developer workshop. My name is Lukman, and I'm on developer relations team. Also on the call here, we also have Tolu and Andrew, who are also on the developer relations team at Paystack. Say hi, guys. So if you during this session, before I get started, during this session, if you have any questions or want to pause, there's a questions tab right there in the bottom right. You also send a message if you in the chat menu as well anytime you want to. So right now, I'll just share my screen now, and we can get started. All right, so we're good to go. Can everyone hear me? Yep. All right, great. So let's start. All right, so welcome again to our first developer workshop. The developer workshop series aims to give developers the opportunity to learn how to use Paystack APIs to build various types of products. Over the years, we've worked with several companies building the most ambitious products in Africa. And in doing so, we've gained some learnings that we'll be sharing during these sessions. These sessions will be highly informative. We'll have technical demos. We'll share key learnings. We'll share how to build so and so products using the Paystack APIs. And our overarching goal is to equip developers building the next wave of startups in Africa with the knowledge and tools they need to do so. Before I delve into that, let me give a brief background about Paystack. So Paystack powers payments and growth for thousands of the most ambitious businesses in Africa. At the moment, we are operating in Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa, and rapidly expanding across the continent. In Nigeria, at the moment, we process over 51% of all online payments in the country, with over $300 million in collections and disbursements each every month. In October 2020, we were acquired by Stripe, the global payments giant. Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that we don't just power payments, we also power growth. Paystack merchants have reported up to 3 times growth in the first quarter and 14x in the first year by leveraging our tools. What tools am I referring to? So we have multiple payment channels and products. pay with card, bank, mobile money, bank transfer, USSD, Apple Pay, etc. Our philosophy around this is that whatever method your customers feel comfortable paying you in, they should be able to, and we are happy to provide these multiple channels and options for your customers. We also have phenomenal success rates. With our direct bank integrations, intelligent routing, and smart error resolution, we're able to guarantee a high success rate in the 90th percentile. That's pretty impressive. We also have well-documented APIs. Developers like you love our thorough APIs, which would help you build anything from simple weekend projects to complex financial products. If it's a financial product and you can imagine it, and you're building for Africa, you can do so using Paystack. Lastly, we also have automated recurring billing, which allows you to charge your customers recurringly and create subscriptions. That this saves you and your customers the hassle of having to enter card details each time they want to make a payment to you. All right, so back to our workshop, right? So over the integrating seamless, secure payments into your e-commerce platform. In the last 2 or 3 years, online retail has become increasingly more popular. And with this, it means that there has been an emergence of new platforms that you can build your e-commerce store with. So this can make it overwhelming if you're trying to build a store and you don't to choose which platform works best for you, or you don't know where to get started from. At Paystack, we've worked with thousands of e-commerce businesses that are trying to build their own customer experiences, and we have some key learnings that we're going to be able to share during this session. So, and we'll be sharing today. We'll be going over what are the payment needs of an e-commerce store, what pre-existing platforms offer, and which ones might be best for you. How to build your own custom e-commerce experiences with Paystack. We're going to build a sample store or 2 during this session, and then we'll close it all out with an open floor. You can ask a question that you want to. All right, so we can. So first things first, what are the payment needs of an e-commerce store? First off the list is you want to be able to accept payments for your products. That's bare minimum in this case. You should be able to get paid for your products that you're listing in your store. And after collecting these payments, you also want to be able to verify those payments and deliver value to your customers. And once when you've done that, you want to be able to handle order cancellations and refunds. Next, so also you might need to have a revenue share model. So think of a scenario whereby you as the platform, you have multiple vendors that are hosting their product, that advertise their products on your platform. And so if that's the case for multi-vendor platforms, you would need a revenue splits model between yourself and the vendors. The next, you should be able to deliver physical and or digital goods. Then you want to be able to handle chargebacks, disputes, and fraud on bad transactions. So these are the needs these are the payment needs of e-commerce stores out there. And now that we have that sorted, how do you go about building one? What ways can you build your store? There are multiple options out there for you that you could build a store with. But in this, for today, you're just going to go over 3 categories of them, right? Starting with seller tools, right? So seller tools are simple tools that make it easy for you to get started selling online. They provide a simple interface that allows you to upload your products, set prices, inventory, and they provide you with a public URL that you can share with your customers to make purchases. These tools are super easy to use, and you can get started. You can get your store up and running within a few minutes, right? An example of these seller tools is we have Paystack Commerce. So Paystack Commerce is a suite of tools that allows African creators and businesses to sell products online without having to create a website. One of the product offerings under this category we have is product links, which is a simple way for you to sell your digital products online. With product links, I'm going to share my screen now to show you what this looks like. We'll also share the link in chat for you to test this out. All right. So I'm sharing my screen now just to show you an example of a product link. All right, so this is what a product link looks like. With product link, you can wow your customers with pictures, animated GIFs, and videos. Customize the page as you want to. You manage inventory and collect delivery fee from your customers right here on the same page. And this is available for you to use right in your Paystack dashboard for free. All right. So moving on. Next, we also have storefronts. So I just showed you an example of product links. So storefronts is essentially, it allows businesses sell multiple products on one page. So I just showed you product link, which is a single product on one page. Now with storefronts, you can have multiple products in the same page, and also still with all the superpowers that I mentioned earlier, that product links bring to the table. So that's just shared an example of that in chat as well. This is free for you to use and available to all Paystack merchants right in your Paystack dashboard. Okay. So next, right. So there are other seller tools that you can use to create your store. We have Seller, we have Nimble, Shopstar, QShop. These are all amazing products that you can try out and see which one best fits your needs, and go ahead and set up your store in them. So that was commerce. The next category of platforms you can also use to build your store is a content management system, such as WooCommerce, Shopify, Magento, Wix, Equid, etc. So they provide a robust suite of tools that let you do background management for your store. They are often bigger platforms, and they allow for more customization than a seller tool would allow you to. So out of all of these options, how do you choose which one you want to build with, right? Here's a chart comparing some of these platforms on specific points. There's some important questions you need to ask yourself when trying to choose between these platforms. First, what's your budget like? What's the time frame for you to build this store? What features or plugins are you looking to implement on your store? How will you be handling updates to the store? Are you going to be doing this yourself, or are you contracting to someone else? These are some questions that help you make a decision on which platform to use. And at the end of the day, when you do decide on which platform to use, Paystack is integrated into all of these platforms, and we'll be able to set up Paystack on there. So just go to paystack.com/plugins after you've chosen, and you can see all our different plugins there with the setup guide for each of them. For the plugins, they are all plug and play. Just install the plugin, configure it with your API keys, and you're good to go. That's it. All right. So that was so we just went over building an e-commerce store with a seller tool, or we also went over what if you want to use a content management system. But what if you have requirements that are not met by any of these platforms that I mentioned earlier? In that case, you would have to build your store from scratch. Should you decide to do this, the first thing you want to decide is your tech stack. What programming language are you building with? What are you using for your database, etc. And no matter what programming language you choose, Paystack is able to integrate into any of these platforms using our various client libraries. Even for programming languages we don't have officially supported client libraries for, you are able to call our API. You can call our APIs directly using any HTTP clients of your choice. All right. So during this session, we are going to be building a sample gift store for this building from scratch under this section. And before we start building, we want to discuss the requirements for this store that we want to build. Right. So first thing is we want gift store to be fully responsive on web. Want to be able to accept payments using pop-up checkouts. That means we don't want to redirect customers to a different page just for them to check out. Then after payments, the customers should be redirected to a thank you page. We want the admin to be able to view order details from the backend. Admin should also be able to cancel and refund an order from their backend. Then lastly, remember the model I talked about where you have is a multi-vendor platform. What if you want to split payments 90-10 between the vendor and the platform? So those are our requirements. Next, we choose our tech stack. What are we using to build this? All right, so we're using Vue.js for the front end, Node.js for backend, Express.js for our API framework, and MongoDB for the database. Again, I should mention that while we'll be live coding in this language, but I should also mention that regardless of what you choose to build your own store with or what you use to build your products with, the implementation is largely the same, and Paystack can integrate into any of these platforms. Right. Okay, so now we can jump into the live coding section now by cloning this repository. So let me share my screen. Please, I'll share the link to the repo in chat as well for you to grab that. Oh, yeah, Tolu has shared that with you. All right, so let me just share my screen. Okay. This is tiny. Right, that looks much better. Okay, so we have our requirements here. I've cloned the repo. So after you, sorry, just give me a minute. It's resets hard. Yeah, so let's just make sure we're on the same branch as the remote repository. All right, so if you have cloned this repo on your system or you're in process, so there are two branches here that are relevant to the workshop that we have today. So we have the skeleton branch, which is a bareback store, no payments integration, it's just the store. And then we also have the complete workshop, which contains all the code where we want to be at the end of the day after we've integrated payments. So we'll be starting with the skeleton and working our way up to the complete workshop. So from here, the first thing you want to do is install all the dependencies. Okay, that's done. And if that's done, then we can run our app, npm run serve. Okay. Awesome. So this is what our store looks like. Is this okay? It's a little small. Zoom in a bit. All right, so this is what our store looks like. We have the products on the left and the checkout form on the right, accepts email address, and we have a checkout button here. It does nothing. We can increase our products. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the code, what that looks like. So there are 4 different view files here. We have layout of view, which is the layout, just the left side and right side. Here you can see the thank you view which okay, so this would only show when this order status is successful, and the product cart would show every when it's not successful. So the cart contains, this is what lists all our products on the page I had just shown earlier. Then we have the thank you page, which lets you know that your order is successful. We'll let you know once it's out for delivery. Then lastly, here we have the receipt.view file, which accepts all the customer details, email, address, shows the subtotal, and then the checkout button here. All right, so this is the code we are starting with, and the first thing I want to do is accept payment on this store. That's the very first requirement on the list, right? Oh, fully responsive, we have that. Then the next is accept payments using pop-up checkout. All right, so to do that, we want to install the View Paystack plugin library. All right, so the View Paystack, that's done, that was quick. So the View Paystack library it exports a pay button component. So I'm going to import that into this, import Paystack from Google Paystack. Come here and export it as a component. Paystack. And now that I've exported, this is the button here. I'm just going to use it to replace this regular old button. Paystack. All right. So I've added the components. The next thing to do here is to add the required parameters to the component as first parameter that we have to pass is the Paystack key. This is your public key that you can get from your Paystack dashboard. I've here, so I'm just going to, yeah. So I'll put that in. The next thing is reference, a unique transaction reference. So let's also add that and say reference. We'll define the field later. We also need to pass email. So on this, here we are collecting the email address already from the customer, so we can just pass that value directly, email. Next parameter is yes, amount. So you can see here, we're already computing the total amount of the customer's cards here. So we can pass the total here in the amount field. However, before we pass the amounts to Paystack checkout, what we have to make sure to convert it to the smallest monetary unit, and that means multiplying it by 100. So if is 1 Ghana cedi, you have to convert it to 100 pesewas. And if it's 1 naira, you have to convert it to 100 kobo, rands to cents, like that. So the function doing that for us here is this naira to kobo method. So I'm just going to use the same field here. Naira to kobo total. Okay, it looks like we're good or almost good. 2 more parameters. So we need to pass our callback functions. Callback is equal to callback. So this is the method that will be called whenever the customer completes the transaction on it. And we also need to pass a function for when the customer closes the checkout. So that will be close. All right, looks like we're good. Let's make sure our fields are all defined. Paystack key, that's there. Reference, Yeah, we have the reference here, generating a unique reference each time. Okay, so that's good. Email, we have taken that from the customer. Amount, that's also there. Callback. Oh, yes. So we have our callback defined. Thank you for your purchase. Have a heavenly day. And our close function too has also been defined. So we can restart our store and go ahead to test this. Okay. No errors in console. Looks like we're good. So I add a couple of these items to my carts. And that's paystack.com. Make payments. Aha. So this is working as expected. We have our pop-up checkouts, complete the payments, and thank you for your purchase. Have a heavenly day. Yeah, you too. Thank you. All right. So that is done. We've just crossed the first requirements of the list, which is to be accept payments using pop-up checkouts. And what we did so far is we installed the View Paystack library. After installing it, we imported it into our checkouts form, then export it as a component and set it up here with all of these parameters. And that is in I think 5 minutes. We can now accept payments in our View app. So the next, what's next on the list? The next thing is after payments, customers should be redirected to a thank you page. So this also ties into the second payment need I mentioned earlier that says you should be able to verify payments and deliver value to customers if it's successful. So what we want to do here is updates, want to update this callback function such that it does that. It checks so that the callback function makes an API request to our backend to verify the transaction just to confirm that it's successful. And if it is successful, then it should create the order in the back room somewhere. So we will update this. We'll update this callback function. Let's take out the alert. We no longer need that. And say this dot verify transaction and create order. It's a very long function name, but we'll have it. Okay, so now we have to define this function, right? And I can just come here to do that. Reference. Okay. So remember, like I said, so here we want to verify the transaction using Paystack APIs, but we can't call Paystack APIs from our front end. That is not strongly discouraged. You should never do that. Call Paystack APIs directly from your front end. And the reason why the reason for this is that your secret key, which is required to make a request to Paystack APIs, is a very sensitive key that should not be exposed in public at all. So any call you have to make to Paystack API has to be from your backend server where your keys are stored securely on your app. So so in this case, we need to make the request to our backend server running on. So I have a server running on. Is it called to? Right, so I have a server running on localhost on port 3000. Let me quickly show you around on what's the code we have running there and what it's supposed to do. All right, so in the API folder, also in the same repo, you have order.js. So we have two different methods here. in this order controller, we have the create function that accepts email, address, gifts, and reference, transaction reference. Then what it does is it calls Paystack API to see if the transaction is successful. Then after calling Paystack API, if the transaction is successful, it creates the order, sets it as paid, and then save it. Then return this response back to the front end. But if the transaction is not successful, it sets the order status to abandoned, and then saves it. And that's what the creates method does. So verify transaction, and then updates the order status accordingly. Then we also have the fetch function, which this just lists all the orders that we have in our database. This can be used by our admin backroom to list pending orders or view orders from an admin dashboard. So here we also have a create refund controller here. So this function, what it does is it accepts the transaction reference and amount, and when it's also to be used by the admin platform to create a refund for this transaction. So when it gets the details and validates it calls Paystack API, Paystack refund API, and initiates that refund. The last controller we have here is the webhook controller. All right, so the webhook routes, this is the URL that we are going to set on our Paystack dashboard as a to receive events and notifications from Paystack. When this route receives a request, the first thing it does is check the signature header. This step is to make sure that these requests are really coming from Paystack. So it does that first, and if they match, then it finds. Once it matches, then it picks the transaction reference and checks the database to see if there's an order already in that date, if an order has already been created with that reference. Remember that our references are unique per order. So it checks if the reference exists. If the reference exists, then it updates the order status accordingly. So this is this is a charge your success webhook, which means the payment was successful. Mark the status as paid. If it's a refund webhook, if it's a refund processed successfully webhook, then you have to mark the order as refunded. If the refund fails, then we want to set the order status to paid because it is still paid since we've not refunded. All right, but what if it does not find the order at all in the database? What happens then? Then it creates the order anew from scratch. That means in this case, the callback method from our front end, that means the webhook is getting to the server before our callback method, right? So it just picks the events, creates the order, and sets it to paid automatically, then saves it. And so with this method, with this check where it checks for if the reference exists first, we're able to have callback functions or callback URLs and webhook URL working in parallel to achieve the exact same thing. All right, so let's go back now to our front end and actually implement this method, this callback method. So I'll say here npm I axios imports. All right, and here under this method, now I can say just okay, hold on. Let's order data is equal to reference, and then what's the last parameter? Let me confirm that real quick. Email address, gifts, and reference. So gifts. And that will be this dot gifts. Okay, we have our data, and now I want to make the post. I just post to this URL the other data. Okay, we can set this as const. So I guess. Okay, and catch errors. All right. So in this case, we want if response dot data dot order dot status is equal to paid. So if the order has been created and we've marked it as paid, then we can say this the order complete is equal to true. What's the Then next, we want to emit an event to every other, to all the other components to emit order complete. Want this gifts, and reset the form. Thanks. All right. Yep. Okay. So quick before we test this, quick recap of what was happening here. We're making a request to this. We're making a post request to this endpoint running locally with this other objects. Now, when it gets to this endpoint, what this endpoint does is it picks the transaction reference, check if the transaction is successful. Then if it's successful, create the order, mark it as paid, then return your response to the front end. And now what we are doing is after calling the request, we are checking the response. If the order status is paid, then emits, sets order complete to be true, and then emits this order complete event. Okay. So let's test this now and see if that's working. Okay. Oh, okay. So here we can see our API requests. So we can see our API requests here. So I can zoom in this path. I think it's quite small. But I don't have an option to zoom in the developer tools. But we can see the requests, and we also have the response from the API here. And so let me just go back quickly to just show you what mechanism, after the API request, what mechanism is making it redirect to the thank you page after that happens. So here you can remember we're emitting this event saying order is complete, right? So in the layout file, we are listening for this layout, the view file is listening for the order complete. So it's saying whenever you get this order complete event, which we emitted, go to run this method, simply setting order status to success. And now this order status success is this is the conditional range. This was ranging any of these fields conditionally. So if it's success, the thank you page is loaded. If it's not, the cart page is loaded. So that's all that is happening here. And we click on go home, it resets it back again. And we are back to the beginning. Okay, so that is, I think, the third requirement. Yes, customer after payments, customer should be redirected to a thank you page, which we, yeah, just to recap what I just did there, I'm making a request from the front end to the back end to verify the transaction. When it's done, I'm setting it as when if the transaction is successful, then we emit the order complete, which redirects you to the thank you page. All right. So the next thing here, it says admin should be able to view order details from backend. Recall the fetch orders API I showed you earlier. So that's the endpoint you would typically use, the admin backend would use to view the order details. You can also build a UI around this, like this one. This simply just lists all the items that are here. Oh, it lists all your orders, show the items in the order, and then you can either mark as delivered when you have, or you refund the order. So this refund button also uses refund controller that I showed you earlier while walking through the backend code. So it uses the same thing as that. It uses the same endpoints as that one. All right. So admin should be able to cancel and refund an order from the backend. So that also same thing that I just showed. But what if, so here we have view order details from the backend, right? Where you can build your own admin dashboard to show this data. But what if you want to be able to view those transactions, the order details directly from your Paystack dashboard? Like this. This is, hold on, sorry, give me a minute. All right, this is live. Switch to tests. And Paystack documentation. Yeah. So this is the transaction I just completed. The last one I just completed on the Paystack dashboard. What if we want to be able to view the transaction data and order data on the same page? We want to make, so as to make reconciliation easier, I want to create one source of truth for all your orders. So if we want to do that, if we want to add custom data, the order data to this page, we have to implement what we call custom data, metadata. All right, so metadata, what metadata does is it allows you add additional parameters to an endpoint that it naturally does not accept. So say you have some data that is important to your business, but the Paystack API for creating a transaction does not accept that parameter. This could be anything from invoice ID, customer bank code, or anything that is important to your business. So you can pass this as metadata, and we add metadata to Paystack. So first, you have a key value pair. So this is data such as this cat ID example. I'm zooming. So such as this cat ID example. So this is, you just pass cat ID and the value, and that's it. So for keys you pass in this key value pair, this data does not show up on your dashboard, but it is returned with the API response. So when you are verifying a transaction, or when you receive webhook for that transaction, you would get this metadata back. And then the second kind is custom fields. So fields is reserved for an array of data that you want to show up on your dashboard. So for each custom fields is a JSON array, and for each object in the array, you have display name, variable name, and value, such as this. Yeah, so you have invoice ID, then the value. So for our scenario, for what we want to implement is custom fields, because we want it to show up on our dashboard, not just on the API. So let's go ahead and implement that there, so we're able to view those order details there too. All right, so I'm going to add. So I'm going to add this under the computed. I'm going to add a computed parameter here. Gifts, create gifts metadata. All right. So what this method is supposed to do is it should help us from the gifts array, from the cart that we've created, it should help us generate a metadata object that is acceptable to Paystack APIs so we can pass it. So basically in this particular format that we have here. So create gift metadata. So first let's define the stats, the base object, const metadata. We have carts, is the gifts, address, is the address. So, and then we have custom fields, empty. Yeah. And then return metadata. All right. So we have our base objects, and now we can format this as we want to. So we just added this because we might need this data to be returned on API too, not just the dashboard. So maybe our backend can also make use of this. But moving on. So next thing to do is to map the gifts array. All right. So metadata, the custom fields is equal to map. Not yet. So if gifts dot quantity, so you just want to pass only the items that have been purchased. So yeah, if the quantity is greater than 1, greater than 0, and return display name, gift name, yeah, variable name, gifts dot id, and lastly value gift dot quantity. All right, that this looks good. Let's fix the indentation problems. And yeah, looks like we're set. Yeah, so now what we have to do is pass this variable into the Paystack component. So yeah, I'll come here and say metadata is equal to create gift metadata. All right, so let's make a purchase and see how this works out. Refresh. No errors in console. Looks like we're good. Let's test. Okay. Boom. Go to Paystack dashboard. Yeah, this is our most recent transaction. And yes, we can see our order details here. So now with this, whether you want to, whether as an admin, you want to view your orders from the admin backroom here, or you want to view from Paystack dashboard, you can do that. It's the same data, and and you can do your reconciliation easily. All right. Yes. Next on our lists, before I move on, um, the last thing on our list, how interesting, we're close to the end, is it says payments should be split 90-10 between vendor and platform. Again, so let me paint this scenario. This gift store that we've been building, is simply a platform, and vendors can come to add their own products to advertise on this platform. So in this case, a couple of blue boxes belongs to a different vendor. Theodore the teddy bear belongs to a different vendor. So when I'm done, if I should add these items to carts and purchase them, um, after me as the customer have made the payments, the platform owner wants to take 10% of what I've paid, and 90% should go to the vendor. That's automatically. The platform does not want to have to think about it or have to make manual transfers after reconciliations at the end of the month. They want to automate this using Paystack APIs. So that's where, and to do this, our split payments API come into play. So on Paystack, we have two different ways of splitting payments. So we have single splits. Single split is when you're trying to split money between yourself, the platform, and a single other entity. So give me a minute. All right. Yeah. So for single split, you're trying to split payment between payment from the customer between yourself and a single other entity. And in this case, to do that, what you have to do is create a sub account. With This is a sample request here. While creating a sub account, you specify the account number, bank code, the business name, and then the percentage charge. You can also make it a flat charge if you want to. And once you've created a sub account, you will get an object similar to this, and you can you also get the sub account code, which you can then pass at any point when you're initializing a transaction. So in the Paystack components that I'm using, for example, I could pass sub account equal to this account underscore blah blah blah, and it will do that split according to the percentage I've already set. This account can also be created from your Paystack dashboard. All right, so that's single split. We also have multi splits. Multi split allows you to split payments between yourself, the platform, and multiple other partners. Right. The revenue share formula between you and all of these partners can be fixed beforehand, or it can be dynamic. So fixed beforehand is there's an agreement on how all payments will be split. Party A gets 10%, party B gets 8%, and party C gets everything else. So that's a static split, and that's not going to change. But we can also have a dynamic split where you don't know how the revenue is going to be shared until the customer makes the payments. So, like our example here in our sample gift store, if a couple of blue boxes belongs to a vendor A, vendor B, vendor C, right? Until the customer picks all of their items in the carts, right? And they're about to check out. That is when you are going to know how much is going to who, right? So in this case, that's where we use dynamic split. All right. So for the static splits that I mentioned earlier, you call you to use that, you call Paystack API, this Paystack Split API. You pass the name, type, currency, and the sub accounts with all their individual shares, and you call the API. Once you call it, you get a split code. So it's similar to the first example I gave with single split. So you get a split code, and this split code you can pass it to any Paystack transaction, and it will be split according to this formula. All right, but we can't use this. We want a dynamic split. Customers are not. So for dynamic splits, what we do instead is rather than creating the split code beforehand, we have to pass the entire split object to the transaction at the point of initializing that transaction. So like our Paystack component now, we are going to pass a split config, an entire object to it, telling it exactly how we want the payments to be split. So let's go back to our receipt.view and do that. We need to add, we need to generate a split config according to, so yeah, like I said earlier, we let the customer pick their items to carts, and after they pick their items to carts, we are going to generate a split configuration in this format. Type flat. Do you want? So let me define the fields. So type says, do you want a flat fee based split, or is it percentage based? The bearer type. This determines who is paying for the transaction charges between among the partners, right? You can decide to split the fees between all of the partners, or you can say a particular sub account should bear the transaction fees, or you can also bear the transaction fees as the platform provider. So it's very flexible. You can do this as you want, and then the sub accounts. Then you now pass the sub accounts array, which for you pass each individual sub accounts and their particular share in the particular share out of the payments.
Hey,
So
Lukman,
all of this,
could you zoom in a bit?
if this share amount must not exceed the original amount, right? Of course. So and whatever is left from this is automatically settled into the main account, which is the Paystack account here.
Hey,
So
Lukman,
let's go to.
Lukman, if you can hear me, could you zoom in a bit? Particularly when you're on the documentation, it's a bit difficult to see.
Oh, okay, I can now. All right, so I'll just go over this again in code. Sorry about that. I'll go over it again in the code, and then we can. All right, so yeah, so this is the code that is generating our split configuration. So we have our base config here, specifying the type as flat, because it's a flat fee based split. We also have the bearer type. Like I said, you can decide to bear the fees as the account, or you can give a sub account to bear the fees. If you want to pass these fees, transaction fees, to the sub account, then you'd also have to set bearer sub account and then pass a sub account code here. But we want a sub account to get. We want to bear the cost ourselves. So back to the account. And then we have the sub accounts array. So the sub accounts array is going to contain a sub account field, and it's going to contain a sub account field and a share. So remember, this is flat fee based. This is also in the lowest monetary unit. So 100 naira. If I put 100 here, that means 1 naira. This is 100 kobo. So, but for in this scenario, yeah, we just take this out. We are going to automatically generate all of these sub accounts and their shares in the coming sections. So just Ctrl Z. All right. So from here, now what we're doing next after having the base config is we are grouping all of the products. So these are our products here, right? We have a couple of blue boxes, all of them. So for each of these products, they all have a vendor field on them. So this vendor field is the sub accounts. We have all of this here. Also, if in your live project, this will also be saved in your DB, where you have the vendor as their own sub account, and that sub account is saved on their profile to know whenever you need to split payments to them. So we are taking advantage of that vendor field here and using it to group the products in the customer's cart per vendor. Then after grouping the products per vendor, then we look through each of those products and each of those vendors, and use that to calculate their total share. So it's going to be Naira to Kobo 0.9 because they're getting 0.9% of the quantity times price. So once after calculating that, then we push the sub accounts, this new share into the subject, and we return it. So with this now, after doing this, that means we can now pass here and come and say split is equal to split config. So we have to pass we have to put a column here to show that it's a variable, not a string. All right, so looks like we're good. Let's test this and see what that is. So I'm going to add multiple vendors. Let's add all of them. Okay. So here we have an error in our console, invalid prop type check field for prop splits expected objects got string. So let's refresh this. I think this was when we're passing a string. Okay, yes, that's gone now. Okay. Make payment. All right, so that's successful. If we go to the Paystack dashboard and check this transaction, yeah, we still have the other details showing up, but we have a new field, which is partners. So these transactions were split between these two partners, as we expected it to. So let's do another test where we can sort out who owns what quite easily and confirm that it's been split 90-10 as expected. So with this vendor, 5 items. All right. So 15,000 naira purchase. The vendor should get 90% of that. And yes, so the vendor is getting 13.5, which is 90% of their products, and the platform is getting the remaining 10%. They're also getting the delivery fees and the 7.5% VAT on those transactions. So yeah, that's that. So this is how we split transactions. If you have a revenue share between yourself and the vendors on your platform, you can split your transactions that way. So let me just do a quick recap of what happened here, what we just did. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier for that you can split payments with a single partner. You can split with multiple partners, and for multiple partners in this case, it's either a static split where you know the formula beforehand, or it is a dynamic split where you only know it at the point of checkout, just like this scenario that we have. And the difference in the implementation of them is that if you static split, you call our API beforehand and pass and get a split code that you can save and reuse at any point you want to use it. But if it's a dynamic split, you don't create anything beforehand. At the point of checkout, pass the entire object to the Paystack component you are using, or the Paystack API you are calling, or the library, whichever method you are using to do this. just pass the whole object to it, and then after initializing the transaction, you would, after customer makes the payments, you would see on your dashboard on the partner section that this transaction will be indeed split between all of those partners as it should be done properly. And quick check, yes, that is the very last requirement on our store. And with that, I think we are at the end of the session now. So before open the floor for questions, let me just do a quick recap. We started the session by going over all of the payment needs of an e-commerce store. And then we talked about the different ways you can build a store. We made seller tools using Paystack Commerce, Seller.co, Nimble, etc. We also give examples of content management systems you can use: Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, Magento, etc. The differences between them and how to choose what you want to use to build yours. And then lastly, building a store from the ground up, which we did now. We built we integrated payments into a sample gift store here, and we verified transaction. We showed the refund, how to refund, also split payments between multiple parties, multiple vendors on here. So now let me see if there are some open questions.
Hey, Lukman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So yeah, there were some questions that Andrew answered, but I think they're worth going over live as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and read one out to you, and you can go ahead and talk about it. So this is from Fufu Warrior. Hi, is it possible to create a custom checkout page without using pop-up and pass the values to the back end, which then passes them to Paystack's back end, or pass directly to Paystack's back end from your front end?
All right. Yes. So yes, it is possible to build a completely custom checkout. So we have two options we provide for that. So first, you can use our charge APIs, which we don't recommend. For you to use it, you have to be PCI DSS certified. We need to make sure that you are using that you're because you'll be handling card details directly, and you'll be passing them to our APIs directly. So we need to be sure that you are handling this securely, and there's no so there's a charge API. So if you want to use this, share. If you want to use this, reach out to us, devrel@paystack.com, share your PCI DSS certification, and we'll guide you on how to get started with that. And then the second option is using our checkout JS library. So this is also available per request. It's a front-end library that lets you build your custom checkout from the ground up. You build all the experiences yourself and customize all the UI yourself. Also, this is also available per request. Make a request, send an email to devrel@paystack.com, and we will be able to help you with that.
Awesome, thanks. Let's take a question that Chigozie asked as well. So Chigozie wanted to know, using the split payment, would we also specify the percentage going to Paystack for the service?
Okay, so transaction charges. No, you won't. You won't specify how much is going to Paystack for the service, because how much Paystack is charging you is fixed. In Nigeria, it's 1.5% plus 100 naira. Ghana 1.9%, I think, and South Africa. So so these prices are fixed, and that's what you would be charged for all transactions. What you can determine in this case for split payments is who is bearing those costs. Is it you as the platform? Is it one of your sub accounts, one of your partners, or are you splitting it equally between everybody? So those are the only things you can decide.
Great,
All right.
thanks. We had a question from Daniel, which I tried to partially answer. Daniel, we may have to move to the chat so we can properly answer you. But Daniel was asking if there's a clearer guide to integrating Paystack in a React.js app. So I responded to that to let Daniel know we do have a guide on our documentation for integrating with React. I'm not sure if that's what you're saying was unclear for you, but you can try that out. And if you run into any trouble with that, hop in Paystack, our developer Slack community. We'll share a link for that now in the chat. And then you can get help from a member of the team there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Ken. There's a question from Ken. Yeah, you would also Sister Rosa, you would get a recorded version of it sent to your email.
Yeah.
After this.
Yes. Okay. And then let me take this. Okay, Daniel is typing, so hopefully we can get some clarity on his question soon. But I also just wanted to add that we also have our Paystack developer office hours that will be starting soon. And so office hours will just be, we'll have a day where we take a few hours out of the day, the developer relations team, and we will let you book appointments with members of the team so that you can sit down for 30 minutes and just discuss any issues that you're having with integration, any use cases you're trying to solve for. If you're trying to build something and you need some advice, you're already working with Paystack and you're running into errors and you need help resolving them, then you can book a session. You'll get to spend 30 minutes with a member of the team who will put you through, give you some advice, help you sort out whatever issues you might be facing. So we will be publicizing this very soon. So keep your eye on Paystack's Twitter, and we'll probably also send out an email just so that people can have the sign up link and can sign up. We're looking to have the first session next week, Tuesday, the 14th of June. So yeah, we'll let you know more about that as information is available. All right, back over to you, Lukman.
Okay. I did two questions. Oh, Daniel said it's clear now. So that's great. Yeah, so there are no other questions. So in the absence of that, looks like we've come to the end of this session. So I'm not sure if that notification is another question coming. All right. Yeah, so I'm not a question. So yeah, that means we've come to the end of this session. I hope you guys found this very useful and you feel equipped enough to build your next daring venture if you are building in the e-commerce space. Again, like Tolu said earlier, we're going to share all relevant links and recordings with you after this call. After this, and we also have the office hours. So if you are thinking of building something around this, or you have further questions that you want to discuss in detail that you think will not be answered quickly here, yeah, so please just keep an eye out for on our Twitter, and we'll be announcing that when that is starting, which will be very soon as well. Yeah, I guess that's it, guys. So bye everyone. This has been great. I think so. Now we'll play some outro music for the end of it. So bye. See you next time.